Well, hey, Chad, thank you so much for willing to be willing to do this interview. As I was mentioning to you before we hit record, I heard you on Dan Sullivan's podcast, Strategic Coach, and loved it. And so I've been following you ever since. And I was just telling you, you are a beast on social media, man. I love the content that you put out on a daily basis. So I just want to tell everyone listening to this, you're gonna love Chad. Make sure you follow him on social. But I want to talk about what you do. So you help people get rid of the stress in their lives and cause them to not worry about money. And so you specifically, it seems like you coach and help people manage money who are entrepreneurs or making 8 or 9 figures. But you certainly didn't start there. You grew up in a middle-class family, is my understanding. Can you kind of walk us through the journey from growing up middle class to now managing, billions of dollars in wealth?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for having me. I definitely grew up in a middle-class family. We were not at all wealthy. I understand that we had plenty to be grateful for compared to other countries maybe who are not in the same conditions. But I didn't grow up wealthy by American standards at all. I mean, it was a huge deal if we went out to eat at just a regular diner to get a hamburger. It was a big deal. And my dad said, don't order drinks, so he was very careful and frugal. There were a lot of things that I couldn't do that my friends could do as kids. Different summer camps and things that cost money. But, I think where did the journey turn into where we are now? I would say I was always a goal-focused person. But once I got into my career, as soon as I graduated with my degree in economics, I was recruited straight from college to work for Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. And as I started at Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, my lack of love for reading turned into an obsession of reading and learning. Like I didn't read books in high school or college. I was not interested at all. I was more of a Cliff Notes. And even then I didn't like reading that. And then I just became absolutely obsessed with learning and growth and self-improvement because I was so humbled by not knowing anything. Here I am asking these wealthy people for their trust and their money to manage. And I was, 23 years old at the time, 20 years ago. So it really, I think, evolved from this thirst for learning and this hunger for learning and growth to where I just have become more of a confident expert in my field because I've done so much on the learning side that, I'm able to really give counsel and advice to people who are very, very successful out in the world.
And just out of curiosity, at that point when you became hungry for growth, was there a mentor in your life that said, hey, here's some books you should read or listen to, or was that literally just self-initiated out of a desperation to grow?
That's a great question. I wish I could say I had an amazing mentor that was giving me those ideas, but I really was just kind of more like alone in my ignorance. Like I didn't know what I did. I knew that I didn't know things, and I would get asked questions, and I was watching CNBC and learning about the markets and investing and realizing, man, there is so much to learn out there. And then as I got involved in coaching entrepreneurs, it was more about like running a business, being successful, leadership principles, self-discipline, financial management. And, those are all the things that I've read and I continue to read. I don't think that I've learned it all, and I definitely don't know it all.
Yeah. And now, not only are you a ferocious reader, but you've actually written your own book. So you've written 2, and you have one more coming out that we'll talk about. And how I first heard of you was about your second book called Smart Not Spoiled. And I certainly want to talk to you about parenting later. You have 5 kids. And so my wife and I have our 4th on the way. But this book is all about educating. Yeah, we're very excited. But the book is all about educating kids to make sure that they're set up financially with financial principles for their life. And can just open-endedly, can you just talk about why you wrote this book and what you want parents specifically to get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're on video, I'll show the book since there's one sitting on my desk here. But here it is, Smart Not Spoiled. So Smart Not Spoiled, I've always tried to do things a little bit differently. I never want to follow kind of the traditional mainstream group think. And so when it came to teaching our kids about money and entrepreneurship, even when it came to paying our babysitters when my kids were little, I wanted to come up with very unique and creative ideas on how to pay and incentivize our babysitters, how to pay and incentivize my kids to teach them about money. And so I think just in our circle of friends in the community and clients and things, they knew that I did things differently. And so I would just get asked a lot. And I'd post about it on LinkedIn, and I would get asked a lot. And they'd say, hey, what are you doing? Or what would you do in this situation? Or what ideas do you have? My kids are 6, 8, and 10. And it got to the point where I simply could not take all that time to answer everyone with the different ideas. And I thought, you know what, I should really just write a book on this and put it all down on paper, memorialize it, and spread it out there to the world. I had no idea how much of a hot topic that this is until that book came out. Because Smart Not, my first book, Stress Free Money, it was a bestseller. You know, it didn't sell millions of copies, but it did really well. But Smart Not Spoiled sold more books in the first week than my other book did in the first year.
Wow.
And I immediately had probably 50 to 60 invitations to be on podcasts. And then it turned into me co-founding a business that we believe is potentially going to change the country's approach on educating kids on money. So it all came from just having a lot of requests to share my own ideas and thoughts. And then it turned into me saying, how about I just gather and collect the best ideas from all around me to teaching kids about money? And so it's kind of the genesis of where Smart Not Spoiled came from.
Yeah, and let's talk about a few of the principles in the book, which I love. First, obviously, to be a steward of money, you have to earn money or make money.
Right.
You have 5 kids. Can you just share a few examples of what you've taught your kids about entrepreneurship and actually earning money? You know, anything that you've implemented in your family that would be helpful to our audience today?
For sure. Yeah. So I tell kids and adults that there's a trifecta of success, and that the 3 things to be successful earning money is, number 1, you've got to be good at something. Number 2, you've got to enjoy it. And number 3, people need to be willing to pay you for it. And if you have 2 of those 3, it doesn't work. So if I love art, I love to paint, and people, yes, they're willing to pay for art and paintings, but I'm not good at it. That's not the trifecta of success. That's not going to work. So if I'm really good at accounting and people are willing to pay for accounting, but I absolutely despise it and I hate it, that's not a successful formula. So what I teach my kids and other adults is really find something that has all 3. Be good at something, enjoy it, and make sure people are willing to pay you for it. And so my youngest is 7 years old. My other kids are 17, 15, 12, and 9. And the older 4 kids each have their own little small business that they run. My oldest daughter she's an Air Jordan sponsored basketball player. So she's nationally ranked. She's a great basketball player. So she does basketball trainings for young kids, and she will have 10 to 15 kids at a session, and she might make $150 to $200 in an hour and a half. And she's doing something that she loves and that she's good at, and people will pay a lot of money for it. She's not making $12 an hour, flipping hamburgers. She's doing something that she really likes. So my son, who's 15, he's actually pretty artistic, and we found a way for him to get involved in spray painting curbs and addresses. So he goes door to door, and he has a little curb painting business, and he's learned a lot about sales skills and talking to strangers, and he's done really well. I think he'll end up doing 2 to 3 curbs an hour, which will get him, if you can include tips, $80 to $100 an hour.
Wow.
My middle son loves animals. He's a gentle giant, huge kid, but he loves animals. And so he's got a dog walking business. And so he's got dogs that he walks around in the neighborhood, and I think he gets, I want to say $20 to $25 per half hour. So and he's only 12. So he's doing great. And then our youngest business owner she's 9. She doesn't make a lot per hour, but I guess if you multiplied it out, she does the trash cans in the neighborhood. She charges $1 per trash can. So it's not something she quite loves, I would say, but at least she's learning. She writes out her little invoices. I tell the neighbors they can't pay her until they get an official invoice. So it's just something that I think we can do better at. So is teaching our kids to be creative and earn money. So if my kids have a birthday party, I've never paid for a birthday present. I'm not paying for their friends' birthday presents. They have to find a way to go earn money to go pay for their friends. And they appreciate it. If they're going to the movies on Saturday with a bunch of friends, or they're going to some activity, they're going to earn their own money. If they're asking to go to Disneyland for a big birthday party in the summer or something like that, they're going to earn the money to get there. So I'm going to give them opportunities to earn money, but they're not coming to the bank of mommy and daddy. And I think that's important because they feel a lot more self-confidence knowing that, hey, I can go earn money and achieve something, and then I can pay for myself. It's very empowering to young people.
And on the entrepreneur front, is that something that you encouraged, or is that something that you required versus going to, like you said, work at a fast food restaurant? How did you encourage and foster that entrepreneurship? And do you believe that anyone could be an entrepreneur versus,
Yeah, good question. I certainly don't want to give the impression that that's the only way to be successful or to make money, because that's not true. I think less than 3% of people are entrepreneurs. So most people will work for a small business, and they'll have that entrepreneurial spirit within the business. Like my teammates and employees at Pacific Capital, they're awesome. They're entrepreneurial. None of them own anything in the business except me, but I still consider them as part of an entrepreneurial company. For my kids, no, they've had jobs where they do have jobs. Like my daughter also does volleyball training at a sports facility that I'm an owner of, and she'll go there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she helps with the clinics, and she gets paid an hourly wage. My son has done some other work where he earns an hourly wage. So there's nothing against that. I just also want to show them that they can do other things that's outside the box. They don't have to be dependent upon working at the movie theaters or working at the fast food joint just to make $1.
Yeah, and I know when your kids were younger, so I have a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 1.5, and one on the way.
Right.
I believe you said in the book you never believed in an allowance. You don't just give money to
Correct.
kids for whatever. And you actually you had a chore chart, and you would pay them, and they got to, it wasn't, hey, this is what's required, but if you want to earn money, here's the tasks.
Yep. Correct.
Here's how they pay. Is that what you did? And then how did you determine, what tasks they didn't get paid for? They were just part of the family versus, hey, you're
some of the basic stuff is like making your bed and brushing your teeth, and they each have their own. We call them helpers. We don't call them chores. So they have helpers. Like they've got one of the kids is setting the table, clearing the table. One of the kids is doing the dishes. One of the kids is taking out the garbage cans and things like that, making their bed. That stuff is because you live here, you're going to do some stuff. But the above and beyonds where they can earn money, I'm trying to incentivize a little more extra effort. And I always leave creative space for them to essentially just look around and find opportunities. So that's I share some examples in the book of that, where they found something that needed to be done and said, Dad, I think this is how much it's worth. What do you think? And we had a little negotiation, and they got paid for their work. So I think it's important to teach kids the correlation between effort and work and compensation and rewards, and not this entitlement dependency where it's just like, well, I'm here for another week. I survived a week, so where's my money?
Yeah. So we talked about earning a little bit. Now let's talk about stewardship. So, you talk about investing in the book. What are some things that you've done with your kids and you'd recommend parents do when it comes to investing early?
Yeah, so my kids each have Roth IRAs, and they earn money. And so because they earn money, they can contribute to the Roth IRAs. They also have college 529 accounts. I actually talk to them about the investments that we're making in those accounts. The older kids get to be more involved in choosing what kind of stocks or things are in those accounts. The younger kids, I'm just essentially showing them and trying to get them familiar with it. The kids all open their own bank accounts at age 7. It took a little negotiation with the bank branch managers because they're trying to tell me that there's certain ages they have to be, but I like sending them up in line to deposit money on their own. Like I don't get in line with them when we're at the bank. They go up there, and even the 7-year-old, he's got his little, I think it's like just an ATM deposit card, and he's got some cash that he earned, and he goes up and tells the lady, I need to make a deposit. And they're looking around for a parent, and I'm way back in the corner, like hiding. But I think it's important to get them used to these kinds of situations, logging into a financial account, looking up investments, walking into a bank. So it's not so scary once they're out on their own.
Yeah, and with that, I'm just curious, you said they have their own Roth IRAs, their own 529s. Yeah. Is that something that, do you encourage them, hey, for every dollar you earn, I want you to put X amount into the Roth IRA, X amount into the 529. Did you guys match it at all? I'm just curious from how you guide that process.
Yeah, so we do match what they save. We do match what they save in their savings account and in their investment account. So I'm getting them used to a little bit like a 401k match, but I don't tell them necessarily a percentage, but if they were saving and investing below 20%, then I probably would have a talk with them. But it seems like they're so motivated to put as much as they can away that I don't really have to bug them about it. So that's, I think that's probably just from training and talking to them about the value of what it could turn into. The second my son was 14 and I talked to him about saving and investing $100 a month and what it could turn into after 40 years. And his eyes lit up and he was like, wait, are you serious? And then he said, well, what if I did 200 a month?
Come on.
And we did the math together on the calculator and he was just like, oh my gosh. So it was like this intrinsic motivation once it clicked. And so my older kids have listened to the audiobook of Smart Not Spoiled. My younger three have not, but we've just talked about the principles. But I think it's important to incentivize good behavior.
Yeah. The last thing on Smart Not Spoiled that I'd love to hear you talk about is you have a chapter on borrow wisely. And we live in a nation where credit cards have ruined people's lives, obviously, but then also some people can steward them well. How do you teach your kids, and what advice do you have for parents on teaching people how to borrow, how to use debt, how to use credit cards?
I think there are a lot of mixed messages out there.
Right.
I don't like a hard stance either way. So I'm not anti-debt, but I'm also not someone who's saying, hey, live it up. Let's spend as much as you can and you'll pay for it later. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I teach them that borrowing for productive uses are a good thing. Borrowing strategically for a business or for an investment opportunity, it might be good, but it also increases risk. Borrowing to go to the movies and go to the restaurant when you don't have the money is not a good use of borrowed capital. So I'm not a big fan of credit cards. I understand there's a lot of points and rewards programs and things like that. I personally tell people, we have a business credit card that we use. We have one. Personally, I've never had a credit card since I got married, so we don't have one personally. So I think it's just important to talk to your kids about the actual cost of borrowing. Like what does it actually turn into? We talk about if you buy something for $99, taxes are going to make it more than $99. But if you borrow and you pay it off over 3 years, it's going to be a heck of a lot more than $99. So let's make sure we're only spending money on things that we can afford.
So good. Well, again, I read the book. It added massive value to my life. And I know my kids' lives will be different because of it. So thank you for that. And again, if you haven't read that book, I encourage you to get it. We'll include a link in the show notes. I do want to spend a few minutes. I know you're also very passionate about entrepreneurship and you work with entrepreneurs exclusively. And you have a new book that just is coming out. And it's called Beyond the Money, 8 Lifestyle Shifts for Entrepreneurs, Making It 8 Figures. And so I'll just leave this open-ended. Why did you write this book and what do you want entrepreneurs to get out of it?
Yeah, thank you. The first book is Stress-Free Money, and that's a very broad audience. I talk about the 7 obstacles to financial freedom. And I think no matter what age or wealth status you are, those principles will apply to you. Smart Not Spoiled, like we talked about, very applicable to parents and families all across the spectrum. Beyond the Money is really for those specific types of entrepreneurs who have already reached a level of financial success. They've already reached financial freedom. They're really looking for what to do next. They're looking for how to optimize their life now that they've reached this level. They don't have a lot of peers who they can talk to openly. I think that's something I've found is like I'm more of a sounding board for these people. They're looking for great advice. They don't want to go back and start all over, but they still want to keep creating. And so I talk about how to be an owner in many different businesses and investments without being an operator. I talk about managing your attention, knowing what to say yes to and what to say no to, because inevitably people find out that you've really been successful and now you're invited to all kinds of activities, events, speaking engagements, investment opportunities. And so we talk about filtering what makes sense and what doesn't. I talk about recharging your relationships. A lot of times on the way up to the mountain peak, you've perhaps neglected some of your important relationships. And so I talk about recharging those. I discuss giving yourself permission to celebrate. These entrepreneurs who do so well financially are often very type A. They'll get to the top of the mountain peak and they're immediately looking for the next mountain peak to climb. And I feel it's very important, mental health, physical health, everything, to pause, look back down the mountain and see what you've accomplished and celebrate it with your team, with your family, with people close to you, your supporters, your clients, and really give yourself permission to pause. I had a client recently out of state call me and say, okay, we finally sold the business and the money hit the accounts. What do we do now? And I said, the first thing you do is absolutely nothing. I said, the first thing you do is you just take your sweet wife out, get a babysitter, and get away for the weekend and write down all the different things that you've learned on this journey. You started a business from nothing, grew it into something very significant. And I said, just take time and pause and reflect and celebrate for a few days. And he and his wife both thanked me for that advice later and said it was one of the greatest things they could have done to celebrate that moment. And so I think there are a lot of things that really successful entrepreneurs could benefit from and beyond the money, because I interviewed a lot of great people, not just clients, but a lot of peers who are just doing great things out in the world. So collected a lot of wisdom from really smart people.
Yeah, we'll include a link to that in the show notes as well. We have a few minutes left, and just a few questions I want to ask because I have your time. You talked about one thing you stress in your most recent book is just what to say yes to, what to say no to.
Right.
One thing I admire about you, following you from a distance on social is, how much you value your family. You have 5 kids. Obviously, you're very successful in your career. What advice do you have for parents just in general on not losing your family while you're trying to build your career and become successful and leading your family well? Because it seems like you do a great job of that.
Thank you, Doug. It's always been a priority to me. And so I've never sacrificed or compromised what's important for what seems to be urgent. And I haven't had much pushback. In other words, I don't think I've missed out on many business opportunities because I've said, hey, you know what? One of my kids has a really important game or an important performance or event that I'd like to attend. Can we schedule that for a different time? So I think being clear about your boundaries up front and deciding what matters most is critical. Often we just think, well, we can make it up later and we can go to the next game and the next game. And I understand there are circumstances where you can't make it to everything, but I've really tried to build my career around my family. So instead of cutting out family stuff, I've cut out a lot of the personal waste. I've never watched anything in my life on Netflix. I've probably missed a lot of great things. I don't go to the movies. I don't watch TV. I'm on social media because I feel there's a great purpose in inspiring and being engaged there. But I've cut out just a lot of the kind of the day-to-day waste and drudge that I think a lot of us protect. And so it's like, how do you have time to do all this stuff? Well, it's because I've cut out a lot of the stuff that I used to waste time on 10, 15 years ago. And I think that's critical as parents is our kids are watching us. They see what we're paying attention to. They see what we're doing with our time. And so it's important to let them know that they're important.
Oh, Chad, this has been a great conversation. Again, I can see you live out your values every day. Thank you for, again, I know we talked about platform, but again, you've inspired me through your content daily. So if you're not following Chad, make sure that you do that. And thanks for all the books you wrote. Again, we'll include links to all of that. Encourage you to get a copy of each of those. And Chad, just as we end today, anything else you want to leave leaders with as we close?
Yeah, you know what? One thought we didn't touch on, but if you add it in the show notes, this is an interesting thing that came from Smart Not Spoiled. So I co-founded a business called Gravy Stack. Gravy Stack, we are taking on the banks across the country for financial literacy for kids. So we've created a game that's an app that teaches financial literacy. Kids love to be on screens. They're on screens anyway. We're giving them a way to be on screens in the way that mom and dad are very happy about. So it's got a debit card attached to the account, and kids are able to play games and learn the financial principles in Smart Not Spoiled. We've raised, I think, close to $8 to $10 million from a lot of significant investors in the kids space, in the gaming and kids learning space. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be live hopefully by the end of 2022. Okay, if not, then for sure in the first quarter. But for less than $5, I believe, a family can have access to the game and the debit cards for up to 5 kids. Wow. So we're really trying to promote financial literacy using technology and using gaming, and that's something I'm very excited about. So we took Smart Not Spoiled and turned it into a business, basically.
That's beautiful. Well, Chad, thank you for your time. Thank you for adding value to me and everyone that will listen to this, and hopefully we'll get to do it again someday.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.